the pineapple originated in our office, and a co-op student that was working in my office, Daniel, I wanted, when we were making the prototypes and we were getting ready for Nick to come up and we were going to make that first ski from our first model, and we were going to make the mold and cut the mold, and that's really what we did when Nick first came, is I wanted to put something on that ski rather than just make this black carbon thing. I wanted to put something on it. And we had like an hour, and we're like, what are we going to put on this thing? And, Daniel came up with this pineapple. And I'm like, that's awesome. So we put this pineapple on the ski just to show that there could be a logo and what that could be like. Because I thought that would be, how the ski looks is a big part of, my what I bring to the table. So that was on there. And for some reason, we never changed it. and it's been a kind of only positive.
It must have been May of last year when I got it, like the shape that I actually had in my head, and we got it on the computer, and it all culminated, and then like the ski came down and it looked exactly how I wanted it and everything, like, and then so a couple sets go by and like I don't know where to put the bindings and stuff like that, and then you spend a week on it, and then all of a sudden you like skied really well. I'm like, holy, this is it. Like we did it, Carl, we did it. And you're like, I don't know, it was probably the most self-gratifying like moment I've had in a long time, like to put the ideas I've had down on a computer, gets molded by Carl, ships down to me, and you ski it, and you're like, man, that's really cool. It was monumental for me.
All right, welcome back or welcome to the Water Ski Podcast. This is Matteo, your host, and the goal of this podcast is to promote water skiing. My favorite sport, probably the favorite sport of most of you listening, the favorite sport of many, and especially one of the things that really pushes me to continue with this project is that the content that is being created here and elsewhere is fueling the stoke for water skiing and making it climb the rankings of favorite sports, at least to a lot of individuals. So, this is what I'm about, growing the sport, making more people stoked about skiing. Now, for those of you who have been listening to this for a while, you know that I truly care about growing and developing the sport. And a lot of it, or a good part of it, comes from product development, product placement, the things that we use to ski, which are many, including the actual skis. And this is what this episode is all about. So episode 68 is my interview with Carl Denis and Nick Parsons, who are the two skiers, hands, brains behind the Parsons Project. Now, as most of you might know, I interviewed Nick for the third episode of this podcast around September of 2019. And a lot of people have been asking me to get him back. And I obviously couldn't wait for the opportunity. And then I saw that then Carl and Nick were developing their own ski, and that was the perfect opportunity to get him back. But we'd been trying for months to make it work. Nick is in Salt Lake, Carl is in Canada, I am in Italy. So there were a couple of complications, but we made it work, and I'm so stoked about this episode. The two are some of my favorite characters in water skiing, excited, passionate, knowledgeable. And I think you'll see how their different skill set contributed to the ski that they're creating. Now, I am a day late, and I apologize for that. Generally, I post these things on a Tuesday, but I think you'll quickly forget that I was late by the quality of this conversation. So I hope you'll enjoy it. And I've been receiving a lot of compliments, a lot of requests for how to help the podcast. Now, there's a few ways in which you can do it. So if you go to thewaterskipodcast.com/support, you'll find different ways: reviewing, donating, advertising, etc. But the number one gold rule remains, which is tell your friends. Now, the weather is getting warmer. You're showing up to the lake to take your first few sets. If your friends are not listening to the Waterski podcast, or if they don't even know what podcasts are, help them out. Help them to get connected to the Waterski podcast. Well, that's it. Let's just start this interview with Nick Parsons and Carl Denis from the Parsons Project. Enjoy. Guys, super stoked to have you on the podcast. And by guys, I mean Carl Denis and Nick Parsons. We've been trying for months to do this interview. I'm finally glad I got a little bit of your time. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure.
So, look, Carl, we're going to start with you because obviously Nick I've already interviewed and we know his story to a certain extent. Carl, how did you get into water skiing?
I don't know. I guess the same old story, just skiing at the lakes. Dad had a boat, parents had a boat, and got out there, and there was a slalom ski that came with the boat, so I did that, and this is like grade 3, grade 4 kind of thing. And then around first summer break in college, found out about a ski club in Calgary, and then where I live, and got out there and skied, a weekday membership, and skied, shoot every day, and found out more about the course and that kind of thing, and then stuck with that for a couple years, maybe a couple years, and then took a break. Life gets going, work, career, and then find a little bit of time and the ability to get back out there and ski. So joined the club again, and that was around 2006, and kind of stuck with it ever since. Yeah. And I remember meeting you, if I'm not mistaken, 2012 in Calgary. 13, I think. 2013, I think, the pro shootout. Yeah. I think that was the first year. Yeah. I mean, you squeezed a lifetime of passion in 2 minutes. Have you always competed? Is this something you took on like after you came back into the sport? No, I didn't even know about competition. That came later, and at the club they would host tournaments, and then it became you enter in those weekday evening tournaments, and just skiing some buoys, and then kind of realized there was a tournament, and then it meant getting better skis, better equipment, and then that started all later on, and I'm pretty competitive, so that was I would say so that was a fun it continues to be a fun thing to do, and to chase your buddies and friends, and just try to ski more buoys. So yeah. So just to get a sense, did you grow up playing other sports, or it's been like water skiing in the summer and that's it? Water skiing would be like a handful of weekends throughout the summer, so super limited. And other sports, no. For me, probably spent most of my time skateboarding as a kid, and so that individual sport side, clicks, and did limited team sports, played some soccer, that kind of thing. Not super competitive or frankly that good at it, but the individual stuff I sink my teeth in, and just work on that. That's what I like about slalom skiing. You're honing this thing, and it's the precision, so all of that kind of connected with that side. But for me as a kid, it was definitely a lot of time skateboarding, and then career became the primary focus after college. And that kind of what career did you put yourself into? That's kind of brings us to where we are now. I think the with the Parsons Project, working with Nick and making the ski is my career is around materials, advanced composites, and that's my career kind of path. But that's kind of was the entry into I guess the business world, in the sense of utilizing those advanced materials for the field that I'm in, which is medical devices, and using those materials for what ultimately is radiotranslucent devices for cancer treatment. And that's what I do, and spend most of my time doing when I'm not able to get out skiing and all the other sports I try to do.
Well, so I mean, I want to venture in saying, and maybe Nick can tell us more, that you guys sort of met at a tournament, maybe in Calgary even, but you definitely found someone there who shares a lot of passion about equipment, materials, wanting to understand, physics and skis. So Nick, how did this whole project of building a ski together came about?
Well, I want to tell you something. Let me interrupt. I want to say something about meeting, because we met at the same tournament that I met you, Matteo. And,
okay.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
I ended up being the announcer for that tournament. I don't know if you remember. And
I do.
And so, man, that's where I met Nick. And yeah, I had no idea that Nick was such a, I guess, prolific guy when it comes to designing water skis and his knowledge. But that was, just want to step back because we were kind of in the entry, how it started. And that's where I met Nick, and that was the premise around that tournament. And, I was there in that capacity, announcing. And then we had I don't know, it was just a really good vibe at the end of that tournament. We had some beers going, and, everyone was hanging out. And so that was like that connection, right there. So then we get into, I know, that's the next thing I think.
What is it? Oh, the next thing. Well, I'll just say a side story in terms of materials about that tournament. You might remember this, Carl, but I was staying at your place with Brad Ronaldson, who lended me his ski to ski the tournament because mine snapped on my way to Canada.
Oh, really?
So, and
That's right.
Yeah, so I actually did, and I skied pretty well at that tournament. I think I got 5th on Brad's ski, which I had to get used to in like 3 or 4 sets before the tournament.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So sorry, small parenthesis aside.
Yeah. So there's a lot.
Nick?
I mean, around us. I mean, meeting you, Matteo, and myself meeting Nick. There was like all this a lot going on, and it was. I think for me, it was like announcing at an event for the first time. You're dealing with your broken. I mean, it was just super fun moment that I remember. A lot of good moments about that. So and that was that. Yeah, it was a really cool time.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started, Nick? So from 2013, you guys started working on a ski together, or how did that develop?
Well, I met Carl at that tournament, and I remember, we spent some time together, and we seemed to have like similar types of humor and joking around and having a good time and stuff. And then it kind of progressed into talking about what we do for work, and then I think 7 years keeps going on, and then we just tossed around the idea over and over again, like, do you want to do it? Should we do it, or what? I don't know. Is it even possible?
And I thought in that time, I actually, it was like you fantasize about making a ski, and because you're skiing, and I have the materials and kind of some basis of the knowledge of how that would go down, but for me, making a ski was actually almost impossible. Like the challenges were huge from a technical perspective, and so for me, the timing was, those when we first talked about it. Nick goes, "Hey, you want to make a ski?" I just thought that's a huge project. So the timing wasn't right. But then all of a sudden, if we fast forward about a year and a half ago or so.
Yeah.
I am listening to your podcast, Matteo, and I'm listening to Nick's
That's right.
interview, and I
forgot to thank you for that, Matteo. Yeah, that was a big that reconnected us. I forgot all about that.
So I started from that interview.
That's what triggered me. I was like, oh man, I knew Nick was keen to make a project, to like do a ski, but I realized through that interview, I think that there was so much knowledge and so much potential that we never talked about, how a ski we made or what. I just felt like there was the time for me to be able to do it and have the time and the bandwidth to do it. And then just that reminder that, hey, Nick's there and has the passion and all those missing pieces that sure I can technically get it done, but the connecting those dots is critical. And that for me was it. I was like, I was on a road trip. I'm calling Nick. I'm going to see what's up. Tell him that I'd probably be up for the challenge.
Yeah, no, I mean, you strike me as someone who's easily up for challenges. At least, the few times I've met you, challenges were plentiful. Now, Nick, you have been interested about skis since who knows how long, probably since the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And yet you never had a chance to quite go solo, right? There were always, I'm assuming, other constraints.
Yeah, I was always under somebody or whatever, and so my ideas were they weren't sidelined, but they added to whatever it was, but I never got to be, it was never my wheelhouse. So, that was kind of a dream, I guess, I have these ideas I want to put down and make a ski. It'd be really cool. And that never got to happen, but it's been happening. So.
No, of course,
yeah.
and he bears your name or your last name on it. Now, what was it like for you? Because I'm assuming the excitement must have been huge, but did you feel like you were ready? Did you have the whole know-how? Like, what was the beginning for you, Nick? Like mentally?
So Carl and I kind of reconnected, and we started talking, and are we going to do this, or let's try it? So we kind of dabbled a little bit, and then through the winter we started even talking more, and then we really got involved, and all right, we're going to spend some time and design the ski on SolidWorks and work on that. And so that was difficult. We just did it mostly over FaceTime, and it was about a 3-month process, and then it's tough. It's tough to do over FaceTime like that, how we did it. And then we finally figured out a way where I could get my hands on something and I could make adjustments and tell them what to alter and stuff. And then things really started to progress that way.
Well, that's a good point, because man, we were designing. Well, there's a point in time where COVID hadn't happened, so travel was possible, and right. We had been going through initial designs, and Nick's like, I want to come up, get my hands on this thing. I want to see this. He wanted to come to the office, get to our where we do the manufacturing of all our equipment and everything, and get in there and get it to happen. And I'm like, just wait, there's nothing here yet. We're just something on the computer. You'll come and there'll be. So I remember kind of holding him back. I'm like, wait, and we're designing, and that was one of the challenges, to design that shape. For us, doing medical devices and everything's so constrained and has so many constraints and geometry wise, such a different world. The ski is such a fluid shape and such a different thing for us that we were trying to figure out how the heck to do it and so I had to kind of hold Nick back and where we're building and doing all this modeling and failing. We were just failing constantly and trying to make something that would be a starting point where we could start to actually create a shape that would become a ski. So we're pre-molding at this point. We're pre-manufacturing. We're just trying to wrap our heads around how to shape and make these models, because we had, the experience was so different, irrelevant but so different in that respect.
And how was that for you, Carl? Because it was a new experience for you as well. Because I'm assuming you've been in your business for a while. You know what you're doing. You might make adjustments and improvements, but you have a solid baseline starting point. Whereas for you now you might have had the machinery, I guess, but you didn't. You were building something completely new.
We had the ability, but didn't know what we were getting into.
Okay.
No idea. Had an idea and definitely knew there was going to be a challenge. But you're right. I started manufacturing medical devices in 2001, and in 2002 formulated a company. And so I had, in that field, I know what I'm doing. But in manufacturing a ski, that's what is so exciting about it is when you take on a new thing like that, is all the unknown. So we're at the point now where we're designing it and making models and kind of failing, and the shapes aren't looking right, and learning about what, from Nick's perspective, what matters in the ski, and what points of in the design are critical and where we need to have control of. And so it became an exercise of, at least for me, going back and forth, learning what points on the ski are going to be, or what areas are going to be our driving areas, and so really technically getting a deep dive into how these skis are going to be designed, so that moving forward, because I anticipated these things are going to be changing, so we didn't want to create something that was like locked in and we'd be starting over, because I imagined the process was going to become fluid, and how we're going to do that process that was going to be ever changing while we're in the development stage. And so my point being that Nick was eager to come down, and we weren't at a point where he could add a lot for us being there. And then we made some breakthroughs, and that's what Nick, we were saying. I think I'll let you take over, when we started to make that breakthrough where you started to have a ski that or models that started to make sense with what you were thinking, I think.
Yeah.
So when did that happen? When Nick, when were you able to grab a piece of carbon surrounding foam and touch it?
I think I went up in December of 2019? Yeah. So I drove up from Salt Lake, rented a car, and drove all the way up to Calgary in the middle of the winter, and it was tough. It was snowy and stuff.
Pure Parsons style, like an unnecessary drive.
Hold on a second. It's not just that. Nick didn't know what he was getting into. He shows up. He's got his skis in the truck. He's thinking he's going up. He's going to hit all these hills, Lake Louise. We got wicked ski hills up here. He's in Calgary. I mean, he ended up sleeping in the boardroom, and it was almost like 18-hour days, and those skis didn't go anywhere near snow.
Yeah, we spent a solid week just at a shop there, like laying up a ski and cutting a mold, and then we had something on our hands. And then I think by February we went and skied somewhere and we tried it, and then that was the first time we got a ski on it, and then we learned from that, and then we kept going down that process of trying different things, but yeah.
So Nick, fair question, I think. You're starting a ski company. You've been on a lot of skis over the years. Mm-hmm. You know what you like and you don't like. Mm-hmm. How do you go about starting from scratch, from a design perspective?
That was something I had never done, starting from scratch, and that was a learning process, and I had a better understanding of skis starting from scratch. I think by going down that route was beneficial, because I was always manipulating existing models, working with good skis or with other companies and stuff so to start from scratch was challenging, but I think that the only way that I think Carl and I really wanted something that was ours, we didn't want to start with something that we copied or did anything like that. It was so the only way to do that was to start from scratch.
No, I can see that, but I bet the adjustment for you must have been huge. And granted, you said something like, I learned a lot about skis, which I know is your top priority, Nick. So kudos for you to go down that path. But I can imagine after, so many years of taking something and, this could be better if we change this one thing, right? Out of, 20, 25. Now you have to put all the 25 in yourself.
Yeah, there was a lot of variables, but we had to. You got to prioritize those variables and what do you want, and eventually you got to pick. All right, there's still stuff we aren't happy with, or I don't know, but and then there's stuff you can change post mold, you can change your rocker or your flex and stuff to kind of make those things that aren't so important not a big deal anymore.
Now, in terms of, and I'll ask to you, Carl, but obviously, Nick, jump in whenever you want. In terms of materials, were you already aware of what materials you needed, the production process, or did you have to investigate there a little bit more?
That's a really good point. And materials, of course, are so important. probably are using in our ski materials that you wouldn't necessarily normally find in water ski in terms of their quality and their grade. So because I'm used to making very specific medical devices, so strength is a critical, and a lot of things are kind of heightened in that kind of environment. So we're bringing those materials and that across into the ski. So our core, the way we process it, I think is probably a little bit unique, and the materials themselves, we have a really, we benefit greatly by the manufacturing equipment that we are able to use. And so I think we have some processes and methods that would be more akin to what you do in a fighter aircraft or something, aerospace, than water sports. So or in sporting goods like a water ski. So the process and the material lends itself to a high degree of accuracy in our process, and I can tell you even now we're developing some checking and testing. Kind of scanning of the equipment of the ski so that we can learn more about how it reacts through the molding process. So just new things that so many new stuff that we're trying to do to build on the materials and the process that we're doing to make that ski. So at the same time that we never made a ski before, we also didn't have any predetermined ideas about how they're supposed to be made. So we end up using some pretty advanced, methods and that gives us, that's both a strength and a big learning curve too. But definitely something that's going on right now is so to answer your question, yes and no. We didn't go looking for what does a typical ski, how is it made. We went and said these are materials we know and how can we apply them here for the ultimate goal of what I would call, what we consider like key design inputs. So when you're designing something, you have your key design inputs. So what are those going to matter? Flex needs to be exactly where you want. You need control over that, and you need consistency. Shape, rocker, that all has to be part of your quality system and highly controlled. And for me, that's my goal, is to whatever we put Nick's name on is going to be made well, because that's my part of it, is making sure it's made well. So that's kind of the other part of it that I'm working on. So that's how the materials play into that, and the materials we're choosing. Yeah.
Now, Nick, sounds like you guys are doing quite a few innovative things, and if you don't want to spoiler them in terms of saying them, that's fine. But what I like for you to do, because we have a lot of listeners who have no idea about slalom, of course. Can you give like a 101 of like how a ski is normally made? That doesn't have to be the Parsons Project. So how do you build a carbon fiber water ski? Like, what do you need? What is the process? Like, in simple terms.
Well, it's 2 carbon fiber laminates sandwiched around a foam core. And that's essentially it. It's just heated up in a mold and pressed, and then it pops out, and then you trim it, and then you have a ski, essentially.
So you trim the edges that come out of the mold?
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty standard, yeah.
Okay. And then what about the inserts? Like, you put the inserts inside before you sandwich, after?
There are, what are those pieces called, Carl, that are in the core?
Well, there'll be, so you've got a foam core which can't hold an insert to save its life. So we have to put for lack of a better word, a pre-insert or a larger insert that's generally of higher density that you can drill into and secure and fasten an insert. So there's a low density core, pre-inserts that are going to hold your metal insert that actually retains a thread so that you can bolt your bindings on, and super critical, the positioning of those inserts. And then there's the fin slot and all the inserts that go back there. So pretty much it. And then there's a question of material. So in sense of, do you have fiberglass or different materials? the quality of the bond to that core, or the type of core you use, the resin systems used to achieve that bond, the volume of resin to fiber ratios, those come into play. So there's quite a list of things that can affect the performance of the ski, and if you sort of would tend to stay in your if you all of a sudden just decide to make a pre-preg ski, which is our skis are made with carbon fiber pre-preg, which means that the epoxy is pre-impregnated around the carbon fiber and in a specific volume to fiber ratio. So the fibers, might take up a certain percentage of the volume of any square inch or square centimeter or volume of material. And the amount of resin to fiber ratio will affect your ability to bond to cores and also your ultimate strength or stiffness. So it can get, I can go on and on, but it gets quite specific.
No, but I'm glad you did, because what my next question to both of you, after Nick explained, it's 2 carbon laminates, you sandwich them, press, and it's done.
You asked for the simplified version.
Yeah.
It's a simplified version, right? No, you delivered. But you, Carl, drilled the point of how there's so many other things you have to pay attention to, and we haven't even gotten into shape. We've just been talking about the process and materials.
Yeah,
right?
and you don't have to pay attention to that. You'll make a ski. That's just the way my mind works, and what I'm trying to put into the ski is a consideration of those things, and a control. Ultimately, a control of those things. So you can imagine if you make your ski wet layup, you're taking a certain volume of resin, you're pouring it there, you're working it around, and then you're putting everything together. The reason a fighter jet isn't made that way is because you need to ensure that every wing performs the same. So you want to know that exactly the amount of fiber and exactly the amount of resin is in that wing, so that wing is going to perform under loads the way it's engineered to do that. Whereas a wet layup process is a different process. You benefit from speed and other controls, but for example, using pre-preg gives you a different level of control.
So speed of production, you mean?
The control in the product, the end result.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, how do you actually cut those fibers and how do they overlay to each other? So those are all things that I'm working with on a daily basis when it comes to the ski, like how to make that happen, how to optimize that so it's the most, we have the most control over that process as absolutely possible, because then through that control we have a consistent quality, and ultimately hopefully the goal is that when you ride the ski it's the same one to the other, and when we want to make changes we have finite control over those changes very precisely. And so that's through the material.
It is an issue, right? Like there's oftentimes it has happened to any listener, to both of you guys, I'm sure, that you have a ski and then for whatever reason that ski is not there anymore. You buy or get allegedly the same ski and not so much, right? Mm-hmm. So it sounds like it's a materials and a production issue, right? Like, so the more consistent you are in building the product, once the mold is done, the more likely the 2 skis are going to feel the same.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think what we learned with we're using pre-preg carbon, so that we've learned that it's really sensitive, and so we had to really fine tune our process so that every ski was the same. Like that was our goal, it was to use pre-preg carbon and get a consistent product, it's been difficult, but I think we've settled in. We've got something that's very consistent at the moment. Just kind of, I don't know. It's been great.
Yeah. Now, continuing with our skis 101, Nick, because I eventually want to ask you about your ski. So I think the more we educate the listeners about what's about a slalom ski, that it makes it so complicated, the better. So we talked about materials, we talked about production. What about shape? What are the variables there? What are the things that make a ski different from another?
Well, let's see, what makes it different than another? Well, I mean, it's not on like a surfboard or whatever. Like every part of that ski, has water contacting it and pushing it and having different influences on the skier. So, and water's so dense that at that speed, I mean, it has huge impacts. So, I mean, you could modify like the tail of the ski a little bit, and so
tail shape.
I mean, yeah, there's wide spot. There is like the the lines running underneath your like front foot area, like how parallel they are there, and then like kind of your tail shape. Like those are kind of the three kind of main things I focus on a lot.
Okay.
And how your
This
nose
rocker.
how your nose tapers, and yeah, and then I've learned a lot through this process with Carl is that rocker might be the biggest component to a ski. I think like before I was always manipulating skis that were already existed, so the rocker was kind of our set, or there is minor adjustments to their rocker, but to start from scratch and then pick our own rocker line and then modify that each time. Rocker is probably my biggest concern.
Yeah. Yeah, so rocker essentially being like the curvature of the ski. If you were to look at it from the side, like how, the curve of the ski in that sense.
Yeah, the way it bananas, you can call it, or something like that.
Right, right.
Yeah, there's stages. Some people have flat spots. Some people have multiple stages where it rocks up, just
Okay.
it can get
Okay,
complicated real quick.
No, and that's kind of what I want to get across this episode with, for those who are not very familiar with how skis are made or designed. Like, you go to the pro shop, you get a ski and you ski. But there's a lot behind and a lot of variables that go into making a high level slalom ski,
Yeah.
Now, because I guess what I'm curious, like, did you find out about rocker being a crucial one as you were already, with your hands in the jar, or did you know beforehand that you wanted to explore that variable?
Well, I definitely wanted to explore it. Like, and I knew how it wasn't like I didn't know that it was important. I always knew it was important, but when you have your own rocker line and for the shape that you created, and then you try and match those two together, it gets a little tricky that way. Because once you cut your mold, then all you have to do, then your variables are to do the flex of the rocker, and so you kind of match that to that shape, which takes time, and trial and error.
Takes lots of cutting of lots of different molds.
Right. Did you say with your hand on your bank account when you said that, or?
Like I said, when we started, I knew it was a project, a challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, sorry, simple question, Carl. What made you continue? Like, did it become some sort of like passion, or did you want to help out Nick? Because it can get pricey pretty quickly.
Cost is absolutely a factor, but more important than cost is passion. And Nick and I both started this project, with so much passion and that's where the competitive side comes in. Like, we're not going to lose. Like, we're going to figure this out. And man, there were some dark times when it's like, damn, this thing is like, what do we do? And I remember I just pick up the phone. I go, Nick, don't worry, we're still in it, just because we just threw away a big slab of material, like we just I got this pile of garbage over here that's just we're gonna hang in there, don't worry. I definitely felt I don't know, maybe I'll speak for Nick, but he felt like, well, geez, I'm asking a lot, like, and I didn't want Nick to hold back ever. I didn't want him to hold back and go, well, this needs to change, but be inhibited by the fact that maybe that means we throw another mold out, we throw another 3.5 weeks of work away. And when I say we, I have a whole team that's working on this, evenings, weekends. Big shout out to Jade at the office, who's doing a lot of the design work. Early on, I had an intern, Daniel. He was, oh man, I mean, he was there that week Nick came, and we spent, day and night. I mean, he was hanging in there. So it's not me doing that work. So, but I can tell you that Nick has like a certain, style, and he would be there, and he'd be on the FaceTime, and they'd see him there talking about the ski. And we would spend, countless hours. But the point being that I didn't want to inhibit him to go, well, as if to say, don't hold back what you want to do next or what you think would make the ski work, because of something that just not in your control, or mistakes that we might make. Because sometimes we'd be trying to make what he wanted and completely fail because we completely our fault, and that happened, I would say, more often than not. But then when we did get it right, and he's aware of all the work that put in, I didn't want to ever inhibit the process. So, and that's true to this day, that we're if there's an improvement or something that needs to happen, then we get after it. So that I think that's really important to in our process, is that I didn't hold any limitations on the shape or what could be done. So if there was a really challenging radius or something that was a manufacturing challenge, we figured that out rather than impose some kind of
rather than saying like, this is how we can do it, this is your boundary, Nick, like you figured it out within this.
It needed to be uncompromised. That's the way I think about it.
Which for those that have listened to Nick's episode and just knowing Nick, I think he was ready for that, ready to just try whatever the hell he had on his mind. Now, Nick, what the ski is called the Parsons Project, right?
Yeah.
Before we get into the name, which is fairly self-explanatory, the pineapple. Where the hell did the pineapple come from? Why because your skis come with a pineapple chucked on it. That's the only graphical flavor to the ski.
It seems to have made an impact. I think we're happy about that, but just the pineapple on the ski, everyone seems to remember it. But like that's how it started, was we were tossing around logos and stuff, and like, yeah, that's cool and everything. And then I think Carl or someone came up with a pineapple and like just threw it on the ski, and everyone's like, that's it. Holy cow, that's it. I mean, it's something so simple that like, no one cared or whatever, but the impact it had, like everyone liked it. And then when we started showing to other people, like, wow, pineapple, that's crazy. And we're like, I think we got to stick with the pineapple. This is amazing.
The pineapple originated in our office, and a co-op student that was working in my office, Daniel, I wanted, when we were making the prototypes and we were getting ready for Nick to come up and we were going to make that first ski from our first model, and we were going to make the mold and cut the mold, and that's really what we did when Nick first came, is I wanted to put something on that ski rather than just make this black carbon thing. I wanted to put something on it. And we had like an hour, and we're like, what are we going to put on this thing? And Daniel came up with this pineapple, and I'm like, that's awesome. So we put this pineapple on the ski just to show that there could be a logo and what that could be like, because I thought that would be how the ski looks is a big part of my what I bring to the table. So that was on there, and for some reason we never changed it. and it's been a kind of only positive,
No, and I mean, the only thing that I can say is that I'm recording this on a computer of a brand that made quite a lot of fortune using a fruit as their logo, so I mean, I see the idea, but it also looks like very stylish, like it's almost like a sketched pineapple. I mean, I know I'm banging on this drum, but it looks really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, I haven't had one person go like, yeah, why did you guys pick the pineapple? That looked horrible. And everyone's like, that was a great idea. The pineapple's amazing. And so it's translated to we have to use it. Yeah.
No, of course. Now, Nick, so you said you went up there December 19, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Beyond the learning process, which I'm sure you tried some skis, they weren't good, when did you have some sort of breakthrough that you were on the right track, where you said, okay, we're going in the right direction?
That might have been last spring. We went through a couple molds, and I was having trouble getting precise measurements translated onto the computer with was it one of your interns, Carl, or?
Myself, Jade,
a program or something.
And we were like missing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Nick wanted something, and I'm like, and we just weren't. We were out of sync, and so we need.
Okay.
And so it's tough. We don't have something in your hands, and you want to put it onto the computer, and so I remember talking to Rossi about this, and what he used to do is he'd print them out. He'd do a full printout of the ski. And so I'm like, yeah, that's what I got to do. So that was one way we were able to get my hands on something and do more precise measurements. Was I'd print the ski out completely, lay it down on my living room floor, and then okay, now I can see it. I can visually see the shape and everything. And so I would put adjustments where I wanted them, and that way I could give. And I'd use my calipers, and just measurement. Like I want it this much smaller here and this much bigger here, and that way we could like shape the ski how we wanted precisely.
Yeah. And the minute we started doing that, we started to fly. Like the what we started to make, I think, started to click. It started to work, and I think that was a leaping off point when we could work remotely. Because at this point now, Nick's can't travel, so maybe he would have taken one of his drives and ripped up and saw us, and
right.
And we would have done this, together and looked at, print out whatever you need to do. But that was an impossibility because, of course, we're in Canada, Nick's in the U.S., so borders closed. And at that time, there was no opportunity to kind of travel under some kind of allowable means. So that was the moment when we things started to accelerate, in my mind, anyways.
Yeah, and so sounds like you found a new technique to sort of communicate better and improve production. But Nick, I'm more talking about that set. Like you have that set on that ski and you have a revelation, right, that you're going in the right direction. When was it? Lake? Give me the story.
It must have been May of last year when I got like the shape that I actually had in my head, and we got it on the computer, and it all culminated, and then like the ski came down and it looked exactly how I wanted it and everything, like, and then so a couple sets go by and like I don't know where to put the bindings and stuff like that, and then you spend a week on it, and then all of a sudden you like skied really well. I'm like, holy, this is it. Like we did it, Carl, we did it. And you're like, I don't know, it was probably the most self-gratifying like moment I've had in a long time, like to put the ideas I've had down on a computer, gets molded by Carl, ships down to me, and you ski it, and you're like, man, that's really cool. It was monumental for me.
Yeah, no, and I mean, knowing your passion for skis, for sure. Was there anything in particular that sort of like surprised you? I mean, obviously positively about the ski. Like, were you getting a lot of speed, a lot of space into the ball? Like, what was it that you went like, whoa, this is what I wanted, and I'm feeling it now?
Yeah. One of my ideas I've always wanted to try. I've been obsessed with how much concave can you go? How much volume can it have? And so finally, back in May, we got a concave that I liked, everything, and then when you go out in the water and you feel that much grip and that much lift and hold from that concave, and you're like making more space in the course, and you're like, man. That was something you're like, man, I'm feeling that. That's it. That's everyone needs to feel this.
Oh, wow, that's cool. because like there's a couple of struggles there that not that you necessarily had, but like that I always see with developing skis, right? You have the computer versus handwork madness,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like you shaped something with your hands, and then somehow it can be reproduced on the computer, and then you have to figure that one out. And then the usual day-by-day testing of, I'm going to do this, and that's what it should do to the ski. You go out and ski, not quite, right?
Right.
So the fact that you guys managed to do this remotely and to get a well-designed, well-skiing ski, it's quite remarkable.
It did happen really quickly, and I mean, Carl's the best, so I mean that had a huge part in it. And then I've had a lot of experience in tuning that hand stuff you were talking about, Matteo, and then putting it on a computer. So I was able to do that pretty well, I thought. Like I've had some experience with that. So
yeah, that was
what
helpful.
About you? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was super helpful. Yeah. just a couple capable guys trying to make a ski.
Well, and because Carl, you're also a capable skier, I'd be curious to hear your first set on the ski. And would you will go with any ski, like a piece of carbon with foam inside that you put your bindings on, that you built. It's got a pineapple on it. You take a set.
Yeah. Let me see how to explain that. The first ski. Okay, so a ski. Okay, so we only could make one ski. So we started with the 66. That's the size for Nick in the shape of our ski, volume, lift. You know, a 66 for Nick is pretty ideal. I know he's going to try some other sizes, deeper, but that's the ski that he used last summer. A couple tournaments, did well, and something that, just to go back, I mean, Nick was able to make a ski to get Nick a PB was like probably the highlight for me.
Right.
And that was like, I was like, man, what would imagine a guy skied as much as Nick to PB. I mean, it's hard enough for me to PB, and I got a lot more runway. So that was like a key moment. But to go back to that same point, that same size of ski that Nick's skiing so well on, I get on it and I'm 30 pounds lighter or something. And for me, the ski was like awesome, but it was like not the right size. So I was like, okay, we're making smaller skis. And so we did that. And then, so I kind of had, for me, I was struggling on the wrong size ski, and then got the right size ski, and it was like happening. However, that being said, still running some buoys, for me, running 35s on a ski, it had, you could feel great things in there. And, it really took off once I got the smaller ski. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it wasn't as simple as like, oh man, I can ski this thing. We had to do some more work for me, and so that was cool. And Nick's been really good about making sure the ski was going to work for me too.
No, and it does answer the question partially, but I'm more interested in the simple things, like you're walking. I'm assuming, was it a Predator you got your first set on the ski?
No, it was at my lake.
Okay, so your
NBC,
lake,
yeah.
even better.
Yeah.
You're holding your ski that you built, and you're putting it on the dock. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, this has got to be a completely different experience.
Yeah, it's surreal. I mean, you built this thing, and you go back a year before, and you thought building a ski was almost impossible. So, it's hard to process all that. You made this thing, and I'd say this, I'm like, I made this. Like, I can't believe it. Right. It's because slalom skis are, there's a handful of slalom ski companies. They're a thing you buy. There was a disconnect, and all of a sudden, I was able to build it, but the shape and how, I mean, there's so much. It seems quick, but it was a year to get that point. Near a year to get that under my feet. So there was so much behind it that it didn't just happen, like that. So for me, I'd been around, I'd seen it. So but after the set, you're holding this thing. It's, you're in the bow, it's dripping, and you're like, I made that. So I don't know, that I still can't put it all into words.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can imagine. I don't think I'd be able to put it into words if I skied on a ski that I built. And obviously with the whole, as you said, like up until a year prior, you thought it was impossible to build a slalom ski, right? And then you were skiing on a ski that you built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, Nick, I'm going to ask this question to you first. What do you envision this Parsons project to be, right? So you now have a ski, you have 2 or 3 sizes, you're selling it, people are starting to ski on it. Where do you see this going?
I don't think we have an end goal at the moment, but I think it's more about enjoyment right now. Like, it's for us, and we are selling skis, and it's seeing people happy on it and stuff. And so we're venturing out. We're putting people on skis, and they seem to like it, and we're selling some, and that's kind of where we're at the moment. I don't think we have anything set in place. So, I mean, that's kind of we want to fund the project, I guess, and keep that going. That's kind of our goal, and yeah.
Okay.
No, Carl?
Carl?
For me,
Yeah.
man, I would love to make a ski that skied the most buoys ever. That would
Right.
be if I put something out there in the future, that would be it. To you know, for us to make a ski that could be you know a record ski, that would be amazing. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, but that may or may not ever happen. But that's like the fantasy, and then beyond, other than that, to Nick's point, to see people run buoys on their ski, because I mean, we've made a very tournament capable ski. I mean, that's I think our goal, something that can give you a different feeling in the course if you're looking for something else. It's different and unique, and in that sense, I think. And so if people are getting more buoys, that would make me really happy, and more access to slalom skiing, getting out there and with a ski in tow changes the experience at the lake. It has for me. And you're bringing something to the table that you hope can really help people, with their goal to get more buoys, or just to have more fun. Maybe make their fun pass funner, that kind of thing. So that's what, for me, I want to see that. I want to be part of that. And have done our best, in terms of making this.
Now, the reason why I asked this question is that, I kind of knew where Nick was going to go. I didn't know about you, Carl. But I guess the and I love it. I love every single word you said.
Thanks.
I guess there's sometimes, and I think Nick can testify to this, like you can be interested in skis, in making skis to make sure that other people have good sets on them and they run buoys and they're happy, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or you can build a ski in that pursuit of that ski, right? And a pursuit that Nick has been after for a long time.
Yes.
And not necessarily
that's a part of what
go hand in hand, right?
And that goes back to meeting Nick so long ago for me, and recognizing the path, to recognize that Nick has like passion and ideas, and I wanted to help realize those. So that is a big part of it. The pursuit of the ski is a good way to put it, because let's see where this thing can take us, because for me anyways, I had no idea where it could go, other than I put my absolute best work into it.
And is your question along the lines of like our ski style specific, and would you think that would a ski that works for me, is that going to work for everyone else? Is that kind of your question, or?
Kind of, yeah, in a sense. So you could continue changing the shape and continue to work at testing and creating a ski for the purpose of continuing to build the best ski you can ever build. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it will work for the bottom of the pyramid, right?
Right.
And so your interest could also be building skis for the bottom of the pyramid. And sometimes those two interests are very different, right? Because
yes.
One thing is to run 41 at 36, another thing is to start cutting the line. So I was just curious to see how you guys are managing the two, because obviously if you want to sell skis, you're going to have to worry about the bottom of the line. There's only 10 people that run 41.
I think I've learned that I can ski on a lot of different skis, and a lot of different shapes, and I can make it work, whatever, how it is. But ultimately, you're right. You need to make everyone happy. And I think Carl and I talked quite a bit about this. Was Nick, if the ski is working great for you, is it gonna trickle down the pyramid? And from my experience, it always has. Like every company I have is always designing to run the most amount of buoys for the top tier skier, and that usually that does trickle down usually. So
interesting.
I've never been at a company like, we need to design the ski for someone's running 28 miles an hour or 28. Like usually that's not the way it goes. It's the opposite. Because if you can extrapolate from 36 miles an hour, 41 off, it's such a fine window that like you can fine tune that ski so much, and then you can kind of bring it down to slower speeds and everything, and it usually translates easily.
Interestingly.
Better than the other way around.
Yeah, no, that I would say. But if I understand it correctly, like the minor changes you have to do to make the ski perform better at like 41, 36 miles per hour, eventually, once you figure those out, to make it, let's say, more 22 off friendly, it's not that big of a deal.
Exactly. That's okay. You can detune it, whatever. It's a lot easier to detune a ski than it is to go the opposite way and tune a ski up for 41. Mm-hmm. That's how I've always been taught and viewed, and that seems to be the commonplace view for most ski designers.
And Carl, has that been the response from the other skiers? Because I mean, I'm sure that after you guys had those revelations, you started making people try this thing, right?
Well, we had this pandemic, so there's a limited has really created a big handicap on what would normally I think happen. Last year I didn't even get down to my normal ski club here in Calgary. So that has changed our game, and things seem to be getting normalized now. And we're really looking forward to this summer and getting a lot more experience in that regard. Yeah.
But those that have tried it, I mean, I've seen images of other people skiing on your ski. Like, what has been the response? Like, what are they liking?
Yeah, I think it's different, and everyone that I ski is like, wow, that's different, and they're like, they want to get more time with it. And usually we're there for a day, or here's the ski, and then it's kind of, so at least that's been my experience. And again, I haven't been able to be at my home clubs, like just spending time here, use the ski. Like everyone's skiing. Well, I'm going, like right now we're still, lakes are frozen, foot ice. So where I am is just such a short season too. So I'm not the best. I got to answer that. I haven't had the normal access I would have, but everyone who's tried it has like, their eyes are like, whoa, that's a different thing, and I want to get more time on that ski, Yeah.
And we just started selling skis in October, like of last year. So yeah, we're expecting through the spring and stuff like that, people will try it and see how that goes.
Sweet. Well, guys, I'm stoked I finally got to do this. I've been dying since I saw a pineapple chugged on a ski with Nick's name on it. I've been wanting to do this interview. So, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find the ski? Like, or can it be ordered? Like, how does it work?
Through tppskis.com. That's pretty much what we've been doing all ourselves. And yeah.
We have obviously. We have an Instagram account where we put our posts and pictures of what we're up to. And then, the website.
Instagram and website. Perfect. Yeah, I'll put them down. Well, thanks a lot for doing this. Hopefully things improve and I manage to see both of you at some point this summer. Yeah,
I'll be over for your tournament in Italy, that's for sure, this year.
Carl, come here, man.
Yeah, Carl, come.
All right.
Carl's coming. He's coming.
Okay, good.
I would love to go.
It's not the type of commitment that I would expect from you, but hopefully we'll get to convince you in a couple of months.
Well, I was just thinking about that time you got me to stand on a table in a restaurant pointing out where you are in Italy. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
All right. Well, guys, thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
That was fun. Yep.
Gents, thanks. We have to clap too?
What? Well, no. I'm clapping to say this is a freaking cool episode. I'm so stoked.
All right.
This was really good.
Really?